This is the Yay. I'm Reg Clay.
And Norman G.
This is the Yay, where we talk about life in the theater and the theater of life.
Yay!
Well, of course, we are sponsored by Central Work. We're so happy to have a sponsor. Central Work.
Double yay, yes.
The New Play Theater, reinventing theater one play at a time. Well, if anyone who's been a fan of our show, we've been doing this since 2017, you've heard us talk ad nauseum about a certain actress who has been around the Bay Area, and we finally have her on the show, Elizabeth Carter. How are you, Ms. Carter?
Hello. So happy to be here. Thank you all for inviting me. I didn't know I was quite a frequent flyer on your show.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Well, when you're good, your reputation follows you, and so you are an actress, you are a singer, you are a director. I thought you were a producer, but you've been around. I'm sure
She has produced. Lord knows, we have produced. Full disclosure: Elizabeth and I ran the Oakland Public Theater. She did plenty of producing.
Yes. I guess I just don't think of myself quite as a producer, but I have had quite a bit of experience producing, yes.
Yeah.
Right. There's nothing in the bank under the producing slot.
No.
But I imagine you've pretty much you've walked on pretty much every single stage or close to it in the Bay Area. Is that about right?
Yeah, I have. I guess I've been in the area for a long time, and so I've had the opportunity to be in a lot of spaces, small and large, in lots of different shows. I think I have a 20 plus, theater career here in the Bay Area. So that means that, I've tried a lot of things. I've done some really bad theater, and I've done some really fantastic theater too.
That's great. We love to talk about that. Norman, as I begin every podcast, how was your week?
I don't know. I'm an old man who might have cancer. That's how my week has been.
Oh no.
I have been doing UCSF standardized patient stuff all week from 8 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon, Monday through Friday, and we start back up again next week. Talking to medical students, and they gotta say the C word. I need to get them to say the C word. My character is afraid that he has cancer, but he doesn't want to say it. And they keep asking, so is there anything else that you're concerned about? Is there anything else? And I'm like, I'm hoping nothing more serious is going on.
Are they trained to not say the C word, to not freak out the patient?
No, it's not that they're trained to. It's human. You don't say to somebody, oh, wow, your nose is all messed up. You talk around things, right? That's just natural. Mm-hmm. But for medical people, especially when somebody has a condition, a lot of times we're afraid of having a condition, so we don't want to say it. It is their job to figure out how to open that conversation. On the other end of the spectrum, don't just jump out, well, first thing that I see when I hear all this, you're coughing up blood, is I'm worried that you might have cancer. I had a couple of them said that to me this week, and one day this guy put me in tears because I was like, it just came out of nowhere. I felt like he didn't prep it at all. Bam! Cancer. I was like,
wow.
Okay. And I did. I finished the interview in tears. I was like, damn.
Now that is great acting. No, you almost had me afraid. I thought you, Norman G, may have had cancer.
No, John. JB has, acting. JB has, he's been coughing up blood for about a month.
Mm.
And he's a 35-year smoker, 2-pack a day smoker.
Mm.
Oh, wow.
But, when they ask him if he thought about quitting, well, my daughter always mentions it. I love his character. He's a lot of fun.
That's funny. It's funny just mentioning that. I remember as a kid, of course, I was a latchkey kid, and in the 80s or whatever, my dad had me run into the store to get him a pack of Pell Mell Reds and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And during Christmas time, I would get him, you could buy like a pack, 20 packs of cigarettes. And I did this in the name of love. And I'm like, oh my God, what was I even doing?
No, because we all did. When we first moved to California, I was 9, and my aunt moved out a couple of years later, and we went to the store, and she gives me some money, the way she had always done, and said, go in and get me a pack of cigarettes. So I was like, I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't figure it out, and I'm standing there, and I said, can I get a pack of those? And the guy's like, you can't buy cigarettes, and I'm like, well, why not? You're underage. Well, it's not for me. No, but the other thing this week, if you saw it on Facebook, we redid our bathroom. So I'm going to take a shower after we finish this. I've had two or three showers in the last 3 weeks. We go up to my mother-in-law's house and we take showers. Uh, I can't wait to get back. And our bathroom is gorgeous. Mara is up there right now putting in the final shelf, and it looks fantastic. So that's been the week.
Nice. Very, very nice. When I think of, I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to bathrooms and showers. I mean, when I get a new place, luckily I won't have to move for a while, but I always check out, I love a good shower head and just, how nice and clean and modern bathrooms are. I don't really care about living rooms or dining rooms, but I like a nice bathroom. But, that's just me.
Well, we got new tile, new shower.
Right on.
It's a new paint job, new mirror.
Mm-hmm.
And she's putting up new shelves right now.
Elizabeth, let me ask you a question. How are you doing in the age of COVID-19, and how are you just functioning?
Woo! Well, I'll just say it is a challenge. I walk every day, so that's like kind of been my I've really gotten in the habit of walking, which is really good because I used to always love doing that. But I have to because I probably go someplace once a week. I walk in my neighborhood, but I don't really go anywhere anymore. I was joking that I love shoes and I love sandals. I love summer. It's like my favorite time of year. And I'm not wearing shoes because we don't wear shoes in the house. So all of my shoes, and I said, I'm kind of missing my shoes. It sounds really strange to say, right? But I'm actually missing my shoes. And as Norman knows, I like to get dressed up sometimes. I love summer clothes. I'm in my house all the time. Where am I going?
Right.
We do have a garden, and so I've been out there, but I also have a 9-year-old, and so and my wife is working at home, so we're all kind of tied up in there all the time. And so, it's hard. It's hard. I have a 9-year-old who wants to be outside and playing with his friends, and that's heartbreaking, man. That's heartbreaking.
Mara was asking because she said, is Elaine working at home? I said, if she is, I hope that means the other folks are getting out of the house because that's got to be distracting.
Yeah,
to have y'all running around.
She's kind of amazing. She's able to focus and do the work. And, we don't have a huge place, we don't have a huge house, but we figured it out. I am right now at what I call my desklet.
Yeah.
The desklet is, made so that I could direct from home and have a space where I could look outside of a window so I don't go crazy looking at a computer screen. But yeah, it's crazy. And I also teach.
You're overlooking the backyard?
I'm overlooking the backyard.
Oh, nice.
So I get to see trees, and there's hummingbirds outside my window, so they keep me happy. And I have I'm sitting in my father's Morris chair, which is this antique chair that has a bar that moves down.
Oh, nice.
And recline. It's it's an antique, and I always had it in the bedroom, and I wanted to use it, but it ended up being a storage unit, they often are. So now I've resurrected it, and I sit in it for hours upon hours a day, and I think about my dad, and it's really nice. So I think we've made a decent quarantine life, but I will not say that some people have slowed down and I have ramped up.
Right.
Right on.
So it's kind of the opposite. So when I hear people having massive amounts of time to read that book they've always wanted to read, or this theory on acting, or how we're going to rebuild and transform everything, I think, God, I'd like to do that too. But I'm in the midst of making. I'm in the midst of making right now. So
right on. And that's the way it should be. You can't let COVID-19 slow you down. And I'm glad that, there are theater companies. We had Jonathan Williams on last week, and he talked about how Tabard Theater, instead of shutting down for COVID-19, they have a one-man show, and they have cameras that can actually stream to the audience.
Yeah, they created a 3-camera setup.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, it's nice when you can have money like that. You have money and you have property like that. There are a lot of companies that can't do that, but they've obviously they've negotiated to transition to make the best out of a bad situation.
Did you know about Tabard? Because I wasn't familiar with them, but they're in whatever that plaza is, downtown San Jose.
No, I didn't.
So it sounds like they took over a space near where the rep used to be.
Oh, okay.
I get they're in that plaza. I think that's that plaza. So I'm like, I don't know anything about him, but yeah, Jonathan Rhys Williams is now the artistic director, and
Wow.
yeah,
There
it's
you
funny
go.
to watch how these things happen.
I know. Like there's so much shift going on right now, and a lot of people are taking a pause to really kind of be intentional about things. Some people are taking a pause because they can't afford to do anything else, and
Right.
their budgets for their theater spaces are so huge
Yeah.
that that's sucking up everything. Some people are really, and some people are figuring out super inventive ways. I just did a voiceover for Mime Troop's next piece,
Oh, nice.
um, which is coming out today. I think it's coming out today.
The
Um,
voiceover. I mean
Tales,
the
Tales
promo.
of, yeah, Tales of Resistance. It's called Fear of the Dark. And it's just a teeny tiny. I'm at the very, very end. They needed, some extra voices, and so my son and I both did small parts
Oh, nice.
in
Hey.
that. So we did a little VO in the house, and I had one part, but it was pretty heavy. It's about a police officer kind of coming to a reckoning, and so I sent him out of the room for the part that I was doing, and then he was a little boy asking for help, um, and it was fun. It was fun to do that with him.
Mm-hmm.
But they're doing radio plays, so people are figuring out inventive ways to be in the space.
Right.
And
Yeah, we almost had him in Maddie May.
yeah. Oh my gosh. Well,
I
now
ended up getting one of my students from Richmond, which, since it's a Richmond story, was, a nice fit. But,
he's now played Banquo in Mackers,
huh,
um, in the summer camp. He's
right,
completed a summer camp because I was like, I'm directing like 7 hours a day. Like, what am I gonna do? He needs something to do.
right.
And so I put him in an online Shakespeare camp with SF Shakes, and he had a good time. It was hard. It was a long day for a 9-year-old,
Mm-hmm.
but he played Banquo, and he was very fierce. So
Nice. Very, very cool. Yeah, I'm glad that, I feel bad for kids because, you think, oh, wow, there's no school, or at least I don't have to go to a school. And of course, summertime is fun. I can go out and run around and play.
right.
But I don't even know if kids can do that. I mean, I do see some kids. I live on Jack London Square. And
Oh
so
yeah.
I can see families, taking kids out, and sometimes they'll throw the ball around. But mass gatherings. And when I was a kid, I
Oh,
used to play football with, a bunch of boys, around the neighborhood. And you can't really do that. So I wonder what kids are doing.
It's really sad because my son has actually really gotten into football lately. He's very, very interested. I know nothing. I am your typical theater student who just is like a theater person who's like, football? What? They throw a
mm-hmm.
ball,
Right.
you know. Um, but he's really, really into it. And so we actually did an online 1-day class of the history of football because we were like anything to keep him like engaged and doing something. But he's very active. He played soccer. He's a really active kid. So, but we have a limit about how much time he can go outside because it's just not safe. And we have a street where everybody and their brother runs, walks, many people unmasked,
Right.
which is, frustrating. He has one kid he can play with. They play for about 45 minutes a day with each other, half an hour, 45 minutes a day, outside riding bikes. They have to stay distance. They both have to have masks on. They can't throw the ball back and forth. It's just, it's hard. It's hard, but that's his lifeline. Sometimes
Right.
I walk around and I see them sitting on the lawn and they're sitting apart and they're just they talk football stats. They talk about life and then they run around and,
Yeah.
scream and stuff for a little
Oh,
bit, but it's hard.
I was reading an article, I guess some parent, I guess, the kids, they play online games and, that sometimes they social media through the online games because you can have
Right.
your headphones on and talk to the friends that you're playing with. But you can also buy, I guess, upgrades and other things. And so this one kid, I think, ran up God, it must have been, I think, $1,500 on their parents'
What?
account without their
Really?
parents knowing it. And of course, they, blew a gasket, and I was like, wow, but there have been some current events. So John Lewis's funeral happened this past week.
Oh
Oh,
my God.
Barack Obama, I love Barack Obama, man.
I listened yesterday. Sometimes I'm sitting on hold. They don't always have enough medical students for us, so I'm just sitting with my Zoom window open, and I played his whole speech. Oh,
Yeah,
That
I mean,
man's voice is just
yeah,
so calming.
yes,
yeah. And it reminds me of, back in the day, you had politicians who you could remember by their words, by, sound bites. And, they gave
right,
great speeches, whether it be Franklin D. Roosevelt or Kennedy, Ich bin ein Berliner, or, ask not what your country can do for you.
right.
And I just get the feeling that, those days are gone, or, Barack Obama brought me back to that moment. And of course, he put Trump to task. He was like, listen, if this is the corner that you're going to paint yourself in, politics of hate, then you live by the sword, you die by the sword. So I'm
Yeah.
so glad he brought that up.
I really thought that one of the things was amazing was I was listening to his speech because I also had just listened the day before to Michelle Obama's podcast,
Yeah,
Oh, uh-huh.
Walking, um, and he says "we" more times than any president I think I've ever heard.
Right.
instead of I. Yeah,
Yep.
good point.
He rarely ever says "I." He almost always says "we," and conversely with our current president, who
Mm-hmm.
always says "I."
Right.
And
Whatever he's talking about. Yes.
it's always in comparison to himself. So, and I also was just, I'm always mesmerized by Obama watching as an actor too.
Right.
The way he crafts a speech and the way he delivers it and the way it pulls you in. But there were also some other really amazing speakers that day. I watched several hours, and there was a woman who was a staffer for John Lewis and just speaking about him in the office and his ethics and why people had been with him for 20 years, um, and she was just so inspiring to me. Um, and you could feel like it was a presidential funeral.
Yeah,
Yeah.
with the
That
exception
level.
of the current president, who
Right.
deliberately decided not to show up. Yeah.
Well, and Jimmy.
Yeah, I give a pass to Jimmy Carter because he's old, and I'm wondering about his health because I haven't seen him in the news lately.
Right. No, I was happy that he wasn't there for those reasons,
Right.
but I just thought how cool it would have been to have four presidents there
Hmm.
and no response at all from the current guy.
I'm
Yeah.
actually glad he wasn't there, to be honest with you, because I think
Yeah.
it would wreck the mood.
I think he would
I
have.
think he would
Yeah.
have put a pall over that,
Yeah. And
space.
not even a tweet. I mean, not even any recognition. Like, we recognize the loss of John.
His tweet was, people, why are my numbers so low? Is it my personality? I was like, this is a man's funeral, and that's all you got to say? Come on.
Yeah, it's really really crazy. It's funny you mentioned, Elizabeth, about just how Obama structured his speech. I had heard because my mother is an ordained minister, and I have an aunt on both sides of my family, mom's side and dad's side, who are ministers. And it's interesting, when they went to divinity school, how they craft these sermons. Usually, it can't go beyond a half hour because people get tired out. And it's broken up in three pieces. The first piece is, you address, you make it light. It's you tell jokes or whatever, or you talk about, let's say, you address the Bible verse that you're going to use, and you address a problem that's happening in today's world or what's happening in our daily lives. That's part one. Then part two, you address the Bible and you address, what's going on, or let's say if it's the New Testament, what Jesus is talking about to the disciples and this and that and the other. And you get into what the problem was at the time that the verse was written. And then the third part is when you take it home and you bring it into, what's happening to today's world and the solution. And if it's a charismatic church, then of course that's when you get, the foot stomping and the clapping and all that stuff. But I just find that stuff fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
It is really interesting, and you feel it move, even if you know the structure and somebody's really good, you feel it move on you, and you like,
Right.
there's a reason, right?
Hmm.
It's pulling you in. It's getting you to connect those things together. And so him talking about his history and being able to say to John, John Lewis, that I am here because of you.
That was the
Yeah.
best. I kept rewinding just to hear that little section because it's like I guess when he first came to D.C. as a state senator, not as a U.S. senator, and he met John Lewis, he said, "I am here because of you." And then when he got into the Senate, he said something similar. And when he got the presidency, he said, "This is," he was being congratulated. He's like, "This is all of us. This is you."
This is you, and that's the thing is we forget sometimes that the path that we're laying out, we're just doing what we need to do, but there's somebody else watching it and knowing that you're making the way for them. And,
Right.
and as an educator, I know that, I've had that experience. Um, but it's when somebody comes back to you and says, "Oh, you said this thing or you did this thing and I watched you. And so I knew I could make that leap."
Yeah.
But I mean, if you're lucky, you get to have those moments. I'm old enough. I've had a
Well, but
couple.
you haven't had to fly to New York yet to see your student get their Tony, have you?
Not
Not yet.
yet. I'm waiting for the acceptance speech, where they like get up there and they say, "And my teacher, Elizabeth Parker, when I was in the," yeah. I don't know about that one. We'll see. We'll see. That would be a bucket list moment if I ever get to have one.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Very, very inspirational. Something we needed. Um, Also, Herman Cain, he passed away.
Boy, that one's been a hard one.
Yeah, I don't want to
It's
speak
been
ill.
hard not to just be gleeful.
I know it's hard to speak ill of the dead, but he brought it on himself. I mean, he campaigns for Trump, and he does it without a mask and surrounded by people who don't have
And
masks.
brags about it. No, he tweeted about not wearing a mask, going
Yeah.
to that thing without a mask.
Yep, yep, yep. Horrible, very, very horrible.
Mm.
And I think the last thing, yeah. Oh, yeah, the tweets about delaying the election. I mean, so
What? I know.
yeah, and it's just ridiculous. He knows he doesn't have power over that, but I think these are just dog whistles.
They
But
are.
Elizabeth, are you optimistic about the upcoming election? I mean, are you worried that there are going to be delays? I mean, are you pessimistic? Are you optimistic? How do you feel?
I'm anxious. I won't say I'm pessimistic. I'm rarely pessimistic. It's just not my nature. But I'm anxious. I'm anxious that people will be complacent because they feel that the state of the world is so awful that they will be complacent. I'm worried that people will not feel safe to vote.
Right.
I am worried about, uh, bless you, voter suppression, around the country. I mean, we see it already, people waiting in lines where they should not be waiting in lines. I know that I was in Georgia where they shut down like hundreds of polling places.
Right.
Yeah.
What was it? One
Yeah.
polling place for like 600,000 population, something like that. It was
That's bigger than like three Bay Area. It's like
right.
seven Bay Area
That's
cities
almost San
together.
Francisco. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like Oakland and Berkeley.
Yeah,
And it may
Oakland.
have been the reason Stacey Abrams didn't win, will she run for the Senate or is it
2018. Oh, yeah, for the governor. Yeah.
the governor? Yeah, yeah.
And that's what I'm anxious about. I'm anxious that the voter suppression is real, and that all of these little digs at the election process
Yeah.
are making people feel like, what is the point anyways?
Yeah.
Because it won't be counted properly.
Yeah.
And instead we need to like kind of dig in further and say, do it, whatever you need to do. How do I need to help you vote?
We need to have another Freedom Summer. Yeah. Mara is actually signed up for she was last weekend calling to Arizona, and I heard some of the call, and it's very cool. You're just saying, do you have your ballot? Do you know that you can still get your ballot? Do you know you have to have it in by the 5th, I think, for Arizona? They have to have it in by the 5th, have it in the mail. And then if they want to know anything else, you can get into politics, but really the chunk that they're trying to get out is just make sure that you're voting.
Mhm.
And it was great because finally somebody asked, I heard her say, well, so let's talk about McSally. Like, oh, yeah, go there. Please
Yeah.
go.
Some and it's emboldened to me, and whether you're Republican or Democrat, to just talk, to just get your voice out. I mean, like I've been looking at YouTube videos, and people are putting videos out expressing their opinions, or Twitter
Yeah,
feeds and Facebook feeds. I mean, it's really I'm getting a sense. I'm optimistic as well, because I think that we won't make the mistake that we did in 2016. And that's one of the good things about mistakes. You can learn from them. I'm also emboldened by the polls. I mean, Biden is leading. I mean, even Texas is getting light red,
right.
which is very, very cool. And also, Trump is frustrated. I mean, you've got Mitch McConnell saying, listen, if, to his senators, if you need to abandon Trump to win your election, then do it. Do whatever you need
Right.
to do. Because
Ooh.
it's not even, yeah, I know, that's big.
Yeah.
So you don't. Not only is Trump under the threat of losing an election, but we may win the Senate again. I mean, I'm a Democrat.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Yep.
we may have a supermajority again, and we can get a lot done. So
Well, on current events, local, scary. So, we went for a walk down by the lake, and Dexter actually just started working at a place not far from the lake. So we dropped him off and then we parked and Mara said, well, let's take a walk down to the lake. So we walked down there. It was like a friggin' street fair. They were parked in that little emergency lane in the middle.
Mhm.
People were just parked there all the way up and down. There were people everywhere, masked, unmasked, all over the place, vendors. And so I know on the weekends they've actually said no parking at all.
Right.
But I don't know if they're doing anything about these vendors. And I just kept saying to Mara, I'm sorry, but for every little group that we see, like you'd see, say, 3 people on a blanket, and you can kind of figure it's a relationship and maybe a housemate or something. Okay, that's cool. But then you see 5 people, no mask. I don't think all them people live together or anything like that. And then you're walking by them because the path is so narrow. So I finally convinced her, let's get out of here. And we went and walked down closer to the estuary. Actually ended up down by your place, Rich.
yeah.
But I'm worried because what we hear in the news is how Florida and Georgia and all these hot spots.
California. If you look on the Washington Post, they have the these lines that
Yeah,
show
the
how the
graphs.
states are going, and California is way up there. I mean, I thought it was
Right.
mostly L.A., but obviously, from what you're saying, we're
We
complicit
are
as well.
smugly thinking, oh, we're not those idiots. It's like, no, we're our
We
own
are
idiots.
those idiots.
So I'm thinking I'm going to spend a lot more time. Like, I would love to take a walk because I do that with friends. We can be masked, we can keep a distance, we can have a nice visit. I'm not going someplace where I'm surrounded by people
No.
because masked and unmasked means that air is questionable.
Well, and I just like implore people, if I was to get on my soapbox, like, please, other countries do it way better than we do. Asia's been wearing masks for a variety of different reasons
Yep.
for many years now. The individualisticness of the American persona is, I get to do what I want to do because I have a right to be my own person,
Right.
and I'm not beholden unto you.
Right.
Right? I don't know you. And if I don't feel like I want to, I shouldn't have to. Or I think I know better. There's also this like mentality of Americans where like, I know better. I think we think our size and our standing in the world, which is falling, sort of immunizes us from things. And it's not true.
Hmm.
And, as somebody who has people who are immunocompromised in my world, and
Right.
somebody who has, an older mother-in-law, and is somebody who, as a kid, who would like to go back to school someday, I implore you, please wear your dang mask so we can get through this. But we won't get through it until everybody takes their own responsibility. I have masks. I don't walk out to take out the garbage without putting a mask on.
Hmm.
I'm gonna be honest. I put a mask on because I want the habit that every time I leave the house, I put the mask on.
Yep.
I might take it off in the car while I'm driving. Sometimes I don't because I just irritate. I'm just like, just leave it on, whatever. Just get used to it. The idea that kids can't get used to it is not true. My son is
Right.
9. He can wear it for a long, long time.
Hmm.
Um, just get used to it. Other countries do it. We
Yep.
can do it too. We are
Yep.
not special. We are not unique. It is not an infringement upon your rights. It is a protecting of all of our health and well-being and the right to live.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and to protect other individuals, because you may feel fine, but you may still be a carrier. I've tested
Right.
several times, and I'm going to be doing another test. I think my fourth one
Wow.
this coming week. And sure, I feel fine, but I may be a carrier. And I was
Right.
mentioning last week, in the Greatest Generation, during war times, they sacrifice, meatless
Right.
Tuesdays and fruitless Wednesdays and all that sort of stuff to sacrifice for other people, which would be, our soldiers fighting abroad. So
Right.
the idea of sacrifice has become lost.
Mhm.
You're absolutely right. Our freedom, we take advantage of our freedom. I have the freedom to act like an idiot. I have the freedom
Right.
to not wear a mask. I have the
Right.
freedom to potentially kill myself or kill somebody else.
Right.
Yeah.
Horrible.
As
Yeah.
Spider-Man said, with great freedom comes responsibility.
Right. Thank
I,
you.
I,
Always.
Yeah. I have one last question for you, Elizabeth. And I'm thinking about the George Floyd and, all of the
Ugh.
Black Lives Matter stuff. What conversations have you had, if any, with your son regarding that?
We,
Have you had any at all?
oh, a ton. I mean, we talk very openly in our house. We are not afraid to have conversation. We never have been. Anything that comes up, if something happens in the world, we talk about it. If in an age appropriate way,
Right.
I don't bring out Cornell West, my 9-year-old, but but yeah, we've had several conversations. We've gone to some protests, he and um i I've talked to him about, some of my fears. I explained to him, you know what happened, um and he knows, and he says things. He's actually very very astute about a lot of things, like, and I try to just really instill in him like pride, but I'm getting to the place where I'm going to have to like start telling him like how to act.
Yeah.
And that's the hard part. I think that's the part where I feel like the most pain is telling him he has to be, really careful in the way that he interacts, not just with police, but like in a situation where he feels threatened to like because now, we've always known that there have been, uh, ignorant and racist folks out there. Um, but yeah, how to just sort of, suss out what someone's intentions are and to get yourself to a safe place. Um, and that's really, really painful today. We talk about racism. We've talked about, we've talked about our history as a country. We've talked about sometimes when teachers or educators or people don't see you fully, and what they read. And we also had to talk with him recently about colorism,
Yeah.
because another boy got in trouble. He got in, him and another boy were together, and a neighbor was racist and came at both these boys, both black boys.
Yeah.
And it was really hard for us. And we had to explain what was happening, and they were terrified. He said he was gonna, what did he say? He was gonna kick their ass or something. They're both
Oh,
9.
wow.
And about picking plants, which weren't even from his yard. They were
Oh.
from the yard of another neighbor who was like fine with it.
Uh-huh.
So, but had attributed it to something. So it escalated.
Wow.
And the other parent and my wife had to go over there and have a conversation with this man and put him in his place. But the kids were terrified.
Yeah.
And we had to have a conversation with our son, who's a little lighter than the other boy. And I said, they're going to think this darker skinned boy is the one who's the troublemaker.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know my son is a lot lighter and very personable, and I know he's going to get away with things that other kids won't get away with. So we had to have a conversation, and he got it. He really got it.
Mm-hmm.
I said, so if something is true, you have to stand up.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, man. It's something that we really don't talk about. It's interesting. My second mom, because my biological mom, she died in 2006, and so my second mom, and I love her dearly, but she's a light-skinned woman, and she talked about, sometimes the races, even within the black race,
Mhm.
of skin colors, and it goes back to slavery times, who was in the house, who's in the field, but it exists even now, and even among, Asian Americans, who are darker skinned Asians and then lighter skinned Asians, and
Yes.
it's unfortunate that it's still happening now in 2020, and it's good. I hear what you're saying. It's the loss of innocence. You're a young kid and you think, hey,
Yeah.
I live in a post-racial society. I'm not even thinking about that. I'm just having fun. All of a sudden, you have a racist bring reality even before you, as a parent, are ready to talk about that,
Right.
and you
Right.
have to have these very difficult conversations. But he's got wonderful parents, you and your partner, and so.
Well, and I think also the other piece that is even for a young person, I think they can understand is that notion of advocacy.
Mhm.
That
Yeah.
you can speak up. We've got a horrible intersection where people will come and sort of practice for sideshow. They'll spin and spin and spin out there, and sometimes their friends will be standing around watching and filming.
Mhm.
And Mara walked out and just, she said, "Hey, I wish you wouldn't do that here in front of my house." And they tried to say something. She's like, "Well, where do you live?" And the guy said, "I just live a couple of blocks away." And she said, "Well, how would your mama feel if you were doing that in front of your house?" And then she just sat down. She didn't call the police. She didn't threaten them.
Right.
But by being that presence, they got tired of this little white lady sitting there harshing their buzz, and they went away.
Right.
And
Yeah.
sometimes just being a presence when you're not the subject, the target,
Mhm.
can help. And even I think little kids can understand. It's the same idea of standing up to bullies.
Yeah.
If you don't have to fight, but just by being that presence, that witness, you can have a power.
Right.
Yeah, it's the art of communication, and we're not seeing a lot of it when it comes to these
Right.
clashes.
Yeah.
Just open up and talk to each other. We know that we're all different and we think differently, but we can still disagree and not be disagreeable. And the more we talk, the more we can understand each other. So
Yeah.
with that, let's have an origin story. Elizabeth Carter. So are you in the Bay Area now? I'm
Yeah.
assuming that you're. Oh, you are.
Yes, I'm in Oakland. I'm in Oakland.
Okay, I thought you were traveling. I thought you were doing some work on the West Coast. I mean, sorry, the East Coast or whatever. But
No, I had been. I did the end of last year. I was in New York doing Eureka Day with Colt Core at Soho Rep. So I did get to do some traveling, which was really fun. But I'm based in Oakland, and I've been here. So yeah. So but now with the computer, you can travel anywhere. So
yeah, that's exactly right. Are you born and raised here?
I am raised in actually Eugene, Oregon. I am a Northwest
Wow.
girl. Yep, Northwest hippie girl.
Siblings?
I have a younger brother, yes, who lives on the East Coast.
And an
Okay.
amazing artist in his own right.
Yes, he is. He is a music producer and does mixes, and I think got nominated for what is it, a Whammy?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I
Something like
remember.
that. Anyways,
People
uh,
should know Elizabeth and I are old friends, so
very old friends. Like
Hmm.
we go
I
back
remember
to
when her brother lived in a little room in the back when they were sharing a house.
yeah. Sharing a house and his studio.
Right.
Cool. Well, so tell our audience how you got involved in theater. Where did you do stuff as a little girl?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so I was thinking about this because Norman kind of gave me a teeny bit of a heads up, and I was thinking, what is my origin story? And I guess the origin is I did do theater as a high school student. I probably was creating radio shows and all the things like all of us with our like little cassette deck. Um, as a kid. At one point, I wanted to be a dancer, but when I got into high school, I really got very involved in theater. And I remember a moment. I think this is sort of like that moment they just sort of have in comic books where everything sort of shifts on a dime. And I was doing theater. I was 15, and was very, very passionate. And I had a really great theater program at my high school, and one teacher who just did everything, but he was amazing. Joe Zingo, shout out to Joe Zingo. And I remember my mother saying, well, how do you, she said something to me. She wanted me to stop doing something. I can't remember what it was. And I said, Mom, you don't understand. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Wow.
And she said, you're 15. How do you know what you want to do for the rest of your life? Right. And I never forgot that. I'm much older now, and I have never forgotten that moment. It was the moment I went, oh, I'm going to show you. Right? I was like, oh, you don't know, Mom. But she didn't know, and she didn't realize. And here I am, 30 plus years later, and I'm still doing it and
Right.
doing it professionally and have been for over
For a
20,
while.
25 years, I think. God, yeah, like
Quarter of a
25
century.
years.
Wow. Yeah.
So, like you just never know. But it sort of felt like one of those moments you see like with the thing and it like, the big screen, the big panel on a comic book where you feel like, oh, this is the moment. And
Yeah,
it
this is
really
when
was.
Peter Parker gets bitten by the spider or whatever, the
Mhm.
transformation. Yeah.
Yeah, it's that moment. And when I just said, no, I'm doing this and I'm going to show you that I can do it. And I was singing, and I actually got a scholarship to study opera at one point at my college. And but acting felt like it was more of a challenge, and I just put I just put so much of my energy in that basket. I just wanted it so badly, and it's a career, it's a life choice, right?
Mhm.
So that's sort of my origin as an actor.
Yeah. What formal training have you had, if any?
Yeah. I went to Mills College. I graduated from Mills College. In my junior year, I had the amazing experience of going to London for an entire year in a program through Marymount College in New York. And they have this London drama program, and it's very intensive. It's like a conservatory for a year. I knew that I wasn't, when I graduated from high school, wasn't quite ready to go into a conservatory program. I felt like I was too, honestly, tender to like be in an environment where I was going to kind of be pulled apart. And that's what I thought school was. So I was like, I'm not sure I'm quite ready. I don't think my parents would have let me go anyways. But so I got my degree from Mills College, but I had this amazing year where I basically studied everything and saw like, I don't know, 60 shows in London
Oh,
and came
wow.
back just like, I mean, we saw stuff like almost every night. We were in class from 9 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock at night. If we had rehearsal with a scene partner. So it was really that conservatory training. And then I came back and finished my senior year. I did Top Girls, um, organized a, uh, basically what you would call like a anti-racist platform for school for the college that year. We're doing a lot of activism work. And then by the time I ended my senior year, I was an apprentice at California Shakespeare Theater, like 5 days before I graduated from college. And then I just started working. And so I never went back to school, didn't get an MFA. I kept thinking, well, maybe when things kind of slow down, I feel like I really need to, I'll go back to school, right? Maybe I'll go back to school. And then it just never felt right. And the moment that I thought I was actually going to go back to get my MFA, I met my wife. And I was like, nope, I can't be separated for that long. And
Yeah.
I don't regret it. I feel like I've had the path that I'm supposed to have as as a as an artist, and so that's But I mean, I've taken other little things here and there,
Yeah, and it
but
sounds like you haven't really needed it. I mean, when we talked with Jonathan Williams last week, we talked about the merits of a formal education or an academic training regarding theater as opposed to someone who just has the talent in them and they just go on stage and they may fall or whatever, but they learn from
right.
just doing. What do you think? I mean, what's your take on, let's say, a young student's like, hey, do I need formal training or do I have the talent right now? Should I go to school or not? What do you think?
I think it's a mixture. I don't necessarily think you have to be in a conservatory. I mean, would I love to be in some of those conservatory classes because they're just like it's like it feels indulgent almost to like get to spend all this time like getting to like hone your craft. Um, And I know that there, for many people, there's a little bit of like what's imposter syndrome. And for myself as well, for many years, I thought, well, they went and got their MFA, so they somehow know some things that I don't know, or they're using terminology that I didn't get because I didn't go to that school. But in terms of being present and listening and being willing to learn from like an apprenticeship, right? You learn through what you're doing. I
Hmm.
think you can, I think you can totally do that. And I think we've commodified the education of actors as if it will pay off in the same way. It
Right.
doesn't necessarily pay off any better unless you go to Yale. If you go to
Right.
Yale, you're going to be working all the time.
Right. There's
Um,
a few places, right, where you just walk out and
Right. You
bam,
walk
there's
out
the
and
work.
I worked at Utah Shakespearean Festival in 1995. Oh, Lord. Um, but they bring in a lot of like MFA students and all that kind of stuff. So I was one of like 5 people that didn't have an MFA or wasn't in
Uh-huh.
the program. I was just like, oh, I have my BA and I'm just working, you know.
Hmm.
And I was really in the minority, and that's when it sort of shifted in the 90s. So I don't know. I think that if you feel like that's what you want to do, I'm not going to hold you. I would never hold you back or say, don't get the training. But I don't think that you can, I think you can find your way and do it without the training. I do
Hmm.
think that, but you have to be someone who's observant and soaking up everything and using every opportunity as your classroom, to show up absolutely fully, in every moment. And I think that I feel like that's what I took with me, and that's what I did at Cal Shakes. Like, I find yourself a mentor,
Right.
get to know them, ask them questions, get them to give you all the hotlines, do your research, get your, TBA membership, go to the panels, like look at people that you admire and start like honing your skills.
Hmm.
If you feel like you need an audition coach, you can get an audition coach. You
Right.
can get together with a few friends and go in on it and like, have a mini class. There are a lot of people who put their dreams on hold because they think that they need this huge education or this degree, and I don't think that that's true. Um,
Yeah, it's very personalized. It's funny because Reg, mostly when this subject come up, I'm on the fence about it. I feel like there are a lot of folks out there ready to take your money, and like Elizabeth said, you don't walk out of that program and get a job. At the end of the program, if you personally gain something, that might be as much as you're going to get out of it. But as you were talking, especially with that idea of internships, I realized there's a way where I would love to see more programs focus, and that's on well, more specific development. We do this like what's her name? Bogart, Anne Bogart. You
mhm.
know, I the Anne Bogart technique is a technique. That's what it is. It's not the only way to make theater. It's not the best way to make theater. It's not the worst way to make theater. It is a way to make theater. I would love to feel like if organizations are going to sponsor that sort of thing, if you're not doing like SF Shakes does, where the kids are actually working with professionals, or Cal Shakes also does that sort of thing, that's great. Something that is specific to who your organization is and how you make theater, that's going to be a valuable lesson for somebody to recognize. This is a way to do it. This is a effective way to make theater. And if you grew with it, like I love word for word, so I love that style of theater. Somebody else might go, wow, I've never been comfortable with that, and that'll help push them in a direction that they're going to be more happy with. I would love it if educational processes gave students that kind of power.
Right.
Yeah, and I'll chip in. Having come from NYU, one of the things I sort of learned because it had all sorts of programs, it's sort of a way of you learning who you are, not
Mhm.
only as an actor, but as a person. You may just say, oh, I just want to get on stage, but you have no idea if you're 18 or 17 years old and you do want to be doing theater. What theater are we talking about? Are you talking about experimental theater?
Mhm.
From a no theater? Are you talking about comedy? Um, a lot of times you won't even know until you get into, let's say, particular programs, and you're like, I don't know if that I'm really into that or whatever.
Right.
So there's one I was a stage manager for. We did Lifetimes 3, which is written by Yasmin Oreza,
Mm.
and it's very experimental. It deals with it's experimental theater. It's very abstract. The director had the actors being amoebas, as a
Exercise.
thank you, as an exercise. And one actor was like, "The hell with this," and he quit. He was like, "I'm not doing this," and
Huh.
and it's one of those things where that's when you know what theater you want to do and what theater you don't want to do. One question that I had for both of you as directors, we had Susan Evans on a while back, and she's the artistic director of Town Hall Theater, and she says when she looks into a resume and she can see what experience or what school a person's gone to, she can tell, and maybe it's a bit of bias, whether she wants to work with that person or not. There's
Oh,
some school that she has a bias against, or she'll be like, okay, I think I understand where this person got their
so you're
technique.
saying the actor's resume?
Yeah, the actor's resume.
Wow.
I have that. I've seen that happen. I'm gonna be straight up because I've auditioned in a lot of places, and I do know that that happens. And I think I used to buy into that a little bit, to be like, oh well, this actor went to UW, let's say,
Right.
or this actor
Or ACT.
or ACT, or this person went to Yale, this person went
Or
to
Chabot.
or Chabot, right? Or Chabot. No, Chabot has like some serious
No,
stuff.
I know. If you say Chabot, then yeah, if you know who the faculty is, you
You
should
know
be
who's
thrilled.
teaching them, right?
Right.
And you know who to call. So
Right.
really what that's about is networking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really what that's about is networking. So like when I listed, and I remember when I first made my resume, it was like I put on their Marymount London drama program, and I put all the teachers that taught me,
Right.
because I know somebody might know
Oh,
that
that's smart.
teacher, right? And be
Yeah.
like, oh, that teacher, especially when I didn't have much on my resume. Now I'm like, whatever.
Right.
But then, it was like, and same thing with putting directors. So the same thing is like you put all the directors, someone go, oh, I worked with that. Oh, I know that director. So they know, like, okay, I have respect for that director, So I do think that that is true. I think it is dangerous if we circumvent, which one of the things I'm seeing in the audition process. When I auditioned for Lear, um, a lot of people are just getting to come in and do either one side or a monologue, and they're just a monologue, or and then maybe read from the script, and then that's it, right? There's no like mixing and matching of people.
Right.
And I think this is dangerous. I think we've gotten so streamlined and sort of kind of tried to truncate our audition process that we are not allowing people to. I did chemistry reads. I had people come back in, and I paired people up with different people
To see what the
because I
chemistry
need,
is.
yeah, to see who fit together, instead of like, I love this actor and I love this actor. Oh, together they make nothing, right? You can
Hey,
do.
you didn't bring me back in.
I'm sorry, Norman.
No bias.
Okay, I saw Cassidy Brown. I was like, oh, okay.
He is lovely.
It's Cassidy Brown. Shit.
I
Yeah,
know he's tearing it up as Kent. He's
I
tearing it up.
bet.
I have an amazing cast, but people kept coming back. Actors kept coming back and saying, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much," because they get an opportunity to actually show themselves fully. And I feel like, and I said, I know, because I'm an actor.
Right.
As a director, I understand when you don't get the opportunity to try something or to be fully in the room, that it is frustrating. And especially when you get down to like a callback, and sometimes right away. It's true. It is true. Directors, like, sometimes you sit back and right away. You're like, nope, that's not going to work. I like that person. They're not going to work in the puzzle pieces I have to fit together, which sometimes have to do with the union, how many union contracts you have, what you're trying to say with the piece, people's ages. I need this person, so this other person has to shift because I need this person in this role. So
Right.
those things all come into play. Casting's really complicated, um, and it is definitely something that I take a lot of time to wrestle in my brain with. Um,
I mean, I was mentioning that I was talking about your process in Lear, and of course, I know nothing behind the scenes, but I was saying, well, so you got company members, and I don't know how many company members I talked to last summer who were not in the show. and a couple of them are in the show this summer, and I'm like, well, yay! Y'all work hard for the company. You really represent well, and yeah, you should get some extra consideration.
Yeah.
You should be the one that somebody like a director's having to go, well, if I use her, oh, okay, well, then I don't really have a spot for this other person who I think is great.
Right.
I've got to mix it up.
Yeah, you have to weigh all those things, and SF Shakes, I think, really tries hard to be a company that is really thoughtful about the people that they work with,
Oh,
and I
very much.
really, really appreciate that. I appreciate it as a director. I appreciate it as if we're an actor working with them, and so yeah, you have all these little pieces, and then you have also, what does the family look like? What is the ethnic breakdown? What is the, like, how many, BIPOC folks, are you having in your cast? Like, what do you want that balance to look like? And what are you saying with that, right? It's not just like, how many people can I throw in there? It's like, well, what are you saying with those roles being in a particular way? And it's really it's much more complicated than people think. I saw something from an actor getting very frustrated about a process and a show that I actually ended up in, and I thought, I get what you're saying. I know you felt like you were tagged along, but in the end, having a person of color in the role that you were up for would have totally shifted the play.
Oh, yeah.
And so actually it would have not served the play
Hmm.
and what the message was, and would have undercut the conversation that did happen around race. It would have undercut that. And so sometimes you have to make these really hard decisions, and you may want to do things differently.
Yeah.
And then you realize you are also in service to the play. And I'm someone who's a huge advocate, obviously, as a Black woman, um, of getting as many folks in the door as I can, and but sometimes you have to make decisions that are based on the story that needs to be told in that moment.
Yeah, no, I totally agree because you can't. I don't want to be in a play because, well, we need a black person. Let's get a black person in there. I want to make, you see something within me that really fits the integrity of the play. It
Hmm.
makes me think of the living document. This is something that we've talked about. I think for
You've seen it, Elizabeth?
I got really triggered by it, so I
It's
stopped
very triggering.
to be honest with you, and I will go back to it when I'm not focusing on other things that really need me to be present and positive, so that I can make some action. Um, but there was the things that were triggering to me were not necessarily the incidents of racism, because I know that those things have been happening. They've been happening to me. They've been
Right.
happening to a lot of people. And I love that people are trying to make some change. I got frustrated because I was a part of, you know, a group of women who were trying to call attention to things, several years ago, and got some attention, but also, like, we've told theater companies, like, this is what you need to do for years. Like, this is not new. None of this.
Right. Right. Aren't you tired of trying to have that conversation? We're going to have a conversation about diversity. Yeah.
Right. And then I got also frustrated with understandable frustration from other BIPOC folks who, if um, were angry with other POC folks not standing up for them, when it's really difficult as an actor sometimes to feel like you have agency to speak up in a room. And we all have to do it more, but actors are the lowest in the sort of rankings of, like, voice in the room. And when something happens, it can feel terrifying to say something. And so having a little empathy and saying, like, we can shift this, is where I love to, like, we can shift that and have more conversation and stand up. But 20 years ago, I know Norman and I have known each other for a long time. When shit went down, we would be like, excuse me, I'm not gonna say shit, but
no, no, you're all
No,
good.
you can't.
I just said it.
We are an
So,
adult program.
Yep.
yes. Um, that listen, that if I said something, then it would feel, like you would never work there again.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
you would never work there
Oh
again.
God. What is it? Trouble in trouble in
Trouble in
mind.
mind?
Yeah. I mean,
Yes.
that's exactly that
Mhm.
conversation, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Gorgeous play that deals with a black folks, and it's actually based on a thing that happened in the WPA, the theater project, where a white director was going to make this statement with this play by bringing in all these actors who were veteran black actors,
Right.
but they'd been playing slaves and maids and whatever, and the dynamic was just difficult, and it's still a difficult conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I read the Living Project, there was one there in the Living document. There was one mentioning of a production that I actually was in, and we actually had some of the individuals on the Yay. And
Right.
basically, it was the one woman who was part of the cast. She was like, "Let's have a prayer," and it meant it alienated individuals who were Jewish
Mhm.
and who were agnostic and atheist.
Mhm.
Hmm.
And but I bring it up because my way. I mean, I'm an older individual. I'm 51 years old. My way of dealing with that sort of conflict is different from someone else. Someone may say, "Well, I'm going to the director. I'm going to challenge this thing."
Mhm.
But I remember going to the actual woman and saying, "Hey, listen, I think you need to understand the dynamics of what's going on. You're going to
Mhm.
alienate some folks. So I understand you have good intentions, but it may not be the right thing to do."
Right.
So
Yeah.
Eli Orquiza, and we've had him on the Yay. He was the one who created the Living Document.
Yeah.
You have millennials who are addressing these issues in a protest way of doing things. And it's a byproduct of the Black Lives Movement and the Me Too movement, and there are all these movements, and so it's like, hey, let's bring it out there. And then you have some who are like, hey, I'm going to deal with this directly. I'm going to deal with like what you're talking about, Elizabeth. You go to the director and the producer. They may not listen,
Right.
but at least you're doing it. So I wonder, obviously theater companies are going to have to address how they deal with actors
Mhm.
and how they address making sure the rehearsal space is a cogent and a wonderful place to work in. And also what you're saying, the decisions in casting, are you making the right decisions? Are you creating both a diverse casting, but also one that actually fits the play?
Mhm.
Oh God, I did a read of a play not long ago, maybe 2 months ago, and because it's with Play Cafe. I'm a regular reader with them. Um, they had me read. It was a father role, but it was Irish. I mean, it was specifically Irish immigrant.
Mhm.
And so afterwards, they're like, "Wow, that was great and that was wonderful." And it was neat mixing up the casting like that. And I'm like, I think not at all. You're not serving the play because the main characters are black and they're dealing with these Irish immigrants. I said, you're so missing the message of the play by straying away from that casting, You're not doing me any favors and you're not flattering me. I don't really want to work on an Irish accent.
Right. I mean,
Elizabeth,
go ahead.
and also I was going to ask you a question as far as what were your experience dealing with racism and even sexism?
Oh my Lord. We have a whole nother hour. Well, one of the key, let's just say, as a woman of color, there are two things that end up happening. Either you can be a target of exotification, right? You're exoticized, um, or you can be invisible, right? So there's sort of these like sort of two ways that I've watched it play out in my life. I was the first woman apprentice. Cal Shakes doesn't have apprentices anymore, but I was the first woman apprentice to be hired back at Cal Shakes in the 90s. And it had always been men. And I had several experiences there, which generally my experience was very positive. It was a rep company, but I did have this experience where I had to play a maid. It was a 1930s production, Merchant of
Mm-hmm.
Venice, and I had to wear this maid outfit in 1930s. And for whatever reason, young. I was like 23 or something. And I thought, oh, I was like, it didn't hit me until we were in tech. And then I was like, oh my God. Because we were having so much fun. We're all bantering. It's all like, oh, everything's fine. And I got in the maid costume. I was like, I am a maid. Holy crap. Right. And so it hit me. It really like washed over me. And I had this little doily thing, like a little lacy thing I was supposed to put on the top of my
Oh
head.
God, yeah.
And I thought, and I was a maid, there was a white girl who was a maid, and there was a white man who was a butler, right? So it wasn't like all the black people were maids. But needless to say, I was having my feels about playing a maid, understandably so, based on history, right?
Right.
And there was a little doily thing that I was supposed to wear on my head, and I got it stuck in my head that if I didn't wear the doily, somehow it would be okay. Like if I could just not wear we make these little bargains with ourselves, right?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think of was it Hattie McDaniel, Gone with the Wind?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So this is what happened to me. So I was struggling, right? And my other co-maid was like, oh, this is so fun. Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, I am having a lot of feelings about being a maid. And I walked out on the back deck of Cal Shakes in costume. And the first thing that this other white actor said to me, who was equity and older than me, said, quoted Butterfly McQueen, I don't know nothing about birthing no babies. And I almost hauled off and clocked him.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I said, I threw an F-bomb. I was like, fuck you, and walked away. And he didn't know. I mean, obviously he should have known, in my opinion, that that's a stereotype and you are throwing that at a black actor. And after Butterfly McQueen did that role, she was blacklisted and she lost a lot and she was devastated by that. And, you know, it was just so, it was like one of those sort of moments where I just remember sitting there and going and talking to another black actor who I've reconnected, who lives in LA now, who we were working that same season. And she said, oh my God, I played maid so many times. And I thought, here's this little spunky, fiery black woman. And she's telling me, oh yeah, I've had to do this a lot. And I was like, oh God, is this my career? I'm gonna fucking play a bunch of maids? Like, I mean, because I was just starting out. And so that kind of, informed me, and especially because I've done a lot of classical theater, especially in my earlier years, figuring out how to carve out those spaces. Or the other funny thing that always happens to me, I'm tall, is people always want me to sing in a particular way. They want me to have a big alto belt and be this,
Because all black people sound that way.
Because all black people sound that way.
They sound like Jennifer Holiday, or
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so there's this presumption also by my size too, that I have this, that I need this black sound, right? This gospel-y, bluesy black sound. I have a very classical voice. I love to sing jazz. I can sing that way. It is not my first comfort zone space to go into in my voice. I'm a mezzo, soprano, and just constantly getting pigeonholed. I feel like in the last several years, it started to kind of open up. I've gotten to do a lot of roles that are not. I played Agnes in Agnes of God. I've done some things that have been sort of outside of those boxes, but it is very clear to me that we get pushed into those spaces, and then when you're in those spaces, to be told, to know that also because I'm a light-skinned woman, that I'm playing roles that maybe should be played by a light-skinned woman. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
I'm more acceptable. I know that, the way that I present myself to some people is like, that respectability politics, like, all of that stuff. And I'm really have come to kind of terms with like, it's okay to be who I am. I don't have to like perform blackness for you because I just am black.
Right.
but I
Right. This
also,
counts. Yes.
yes, but I also want to try to set up spaces where we can have, those conversations. But I've hit a lot of things. Um, I've had artistic directors hit on me. I've had them ignore me and treat me like crap, even while they're directing me. I've had some really traumatic experiences, and I've watched other people and tried to, intervene. And as I've more
Well,
as
you,
I've grown in myself to be
yeah.
able to stand up, especially for young people, because we need to teach a different way. I just directed at my high school that I teach at last year. I directed Abraham Lincoln's Big Gay Dance
Oh,
Party.
that's right. I
It's
I wish I
such
could
a
have
great
seen
play.
that.
It's amazing. But there's a Latina in there that Esmeralda Diaz, and I had two Latina students in my program, and neither one of them ended up wanting to do the role. And I had this other actor, she's like, I can't play it as. So these are young people. These are high school students. They're like, I don't feel comfortable. I don't want to, I can't. I know that, like, she was a fantastic actor. So we totally had to change the character, because she was like, I can't be a Latina. Like, I won't pretend to be a Latina. And I was like, I don't want you to pretend to be a Latina. So what do we need to do? So, like, they're coming with a new perspective, which I love. Is like, I'm not going to take that role or appropriate that role. So what do we need to do to
That's
make that
awesome.
work?
It's
And I thought,
that's gonna be a hard conversation though, because folks are now getting picky about, well, should you do this and should you do that? And I think there's the need for sensitivity to it, but you should also ask yourself, because I mean that's what we've had to do.
right,
I did once this weird production of As You Like It that was set at the end of the Spanish Inquisition.
mm,
And I said to the director, who am I? And he was like, I don't think of you as black. I'm like,
oh,
please.
no, 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 that's the wrong answer. Wrong
Right.
answer.
And
Right.
so I did my research, and it wasn't hard to find when you consider that Spain was ruled by the Moors for 700 years, it's not hard to find black people in their culture. Not at all. And so I ended up having to do that work, and I
Right.
brought that to the character. It didn't change a word of what we did.
Right.
What a
It
shame
did
the
make
director didn't
for
have
a
that. Yeah.
fascinating thing. So if you're going to talk about the Latin world,
Right.
those folks from that diaspora,
Mhm.
there's a wonderful range there that's available for to actors if they
Well,
want
and
to
also, like,
explore.
Hispanic versus uh Latin American.
Latinx,
I mean,
yeah,
like, Latinx, like, those are two different things.
yes,
People conflate them, but they are two different things. So, um, like, they're just things that we need to be aware of. When I did You Never Can Tell at Cal Shakes in, I don't remember the year that
that
was,
was gorgeous. I love that production.
2016, had so much fun. But, I came to Lisa Peterson in one of our text conversations, and I was like, yeah, so who am I in 1912 or something, or 1908? Like, who am I as a Black woman? Because I'm not going to leave my Black woman outside the door, because the audience is going to see me. I'm not a neutral person. And I know you had this whole family that makes sense together. So who am I? So we started, and so I had to do the research, right? Like, who are the women? Who are the Black women of this time? Who are feminists? Who are doing, and some of them I knew and some of them I didn't know. And who were writing at that time. We have, Ida B. Wells, we have, like, so, but that's often the onus is on us as actors to make sense of why we exist in this space that is not necessarily was originally written for us.
And here's a question: as directors, I mean, is it right that it should be the onus of the actor to know what the actor is, or should the director have it in their vision to say, "Hey, listen, this is what I
I,
see you as."
I think it's first. It is the actors. As a director, I love it when actors bring something that I wasn't thinking about to the mix. Is the director that flexible? Because as a director, I can't have the 100% vision of this piece.
No, no, but I do think it is. I think it is irresponsible to hire actors of color and not be thinking about how they fit in that world.
Agreed.
I think
Yeah.
that that is irresponsible, and I think you have to have some place to like make sense of it, and you have to like not necessarily ignore it unless it really, and then you have to offer and ask the question of the actor, like, okay, well, who is this person? Like, why are you here? Let's talk about like what does it mean to have you as in your body, because as much as people want to like pretend that they can kind of, we've gotten to this thing, you know, we went in the 2000s, I would say, late 90s, 2000s, it was sort of like, okay, well, you come on stage and you're just sort of in neutral. You know, we're just neutralizing everyone, right? That was the idea that like color didn't matter, right?
Right.
But that's not actually, you know, psychologically, it doesn't actually work, right? There are dynamics, there are power, there's more interesting stuff that you can bring to a play if you don't ignore those things,
Yeah.
right?
And certainly the audience doesn't see it that way. They see, if you're a black person, they're going to see a black person.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So make it complex for them. Make it interesting for them. Have hard questions. It doesn't mean it won't throw wrenches in your vision. It will, you know.
Yeah, but
Um,
that's part of the challenge. No, I totally agree. And as an actor, I'm like, well, listen, why did you hire me? You know, what did you see in me? And if you don't know what the character is, and you know, if I'm doing all the work, I mean, I don't mind doing the work. You know, I'm the type of actor. I'll have all sorts of ideas, and it's one of the things that we talk about on the Yay. The actor not just seeing themselves as, oh, I just hope this company hires me, but the company is also auditioning themselves for you. It's like,
yes.
do I want to be a part of this play? Do I want to be part of this company? If I'm going to be doing the rehearsal process for 3.5 months or so, you know, is this a company that I want to be with? So we talk about the actor empowering themselves.
Yes.
How do I see myself? Is this a director I want to work with, and what have you? And also, that's a question I should ask you, because there are a lot of actors who want to be at your level that you are right now, Elizabeth. When did you see yourself as a sort of business where you say, hey, I've got to take authority of me as an actor and see myself not just as, oh, please, please, please give me a job, but as, well, let me see if I want to work with this company.
Hmm.
Does that
Wow.
make sense?
I'm
Does
Yeah,
trying.
it,
that one's harder for me. Go ahead,
does
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth?
You know, I think that it probably happened probably a little later than I would think, but I think it was probably when I started doing when Trouble in Mind right around then. So that's like, I don't know, 2000 something, in the 2000s. That I started saying like, oh, do I want to do this play?
Right.
Um, um, and
I
starting,
do remember this because you were also, your relationship was starting to solidify. You were starting to move towards marriage and how that was going to fit in your life and how theater was going to continue to fit in life. That was an interesting period.
yeah, and I think that when we, you know, when we look at like the whole totality of our life, you know, we make certain sacrifices to do theater, right? And
Yep.
our personal lives take hits as well. So like they had to be, and the roles were getting better. And I started working with the Aurora, and I had a really good relationship with the Aurora, and I felt so I started working, especially with Josh Costello, just like getting kind of, you know, um, roles that I didn't normally wasn't normally getting read for. And I started to realize like I get to choose what plays are interesting to me. And I actually turned down a couple of things that you know, that also sometimes all the auditions and all the offers come all at the same time, right?
Right.
You get to decide, okay, I can't do everything. So what I really want to be doing? What am I really going to go for? And then there were directors like, I want to work with that director. I'm going to work really hard, and I didn't get it, you know. But I think that you have to know that yes, you have the ability to say no. Your career will not end if you say no.
Right.
You know, if you have a gut feeling this project is not right for you, and the universe has been very good to me, and a lot of projects that I didn't get into ended up being things I should not have been in, and I dodged a bullet, right?
Right. That's always a nice feeling.
Super grateful for that. Um, you know, but I mean, everything else I was supposed to be doing, could have been doing this summer, is canceled. The one thing I chose to do, because I was like, this is going to be important, and this is going to be the challenge, where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
And but you do have to start to look at, like, do I want this? Do I, there's sometimes you get into situations where you think, oh, I wasn't sure about this, and it turns out to be amazing, and you learn so much and you grow as a human being, in immeasurable ways. But you have to be willing to walk away, preferably not in the middle of a process, so
Right.
you don't jeopardize your fellow actors.
Yeah.
But before, to ask the right questions that you need the answers to. I
Yeah.
know when I'm directing, they're also auditioning me. I'm showing them that I am thoughtful and prepared, and um, and that I work well with them, that I can direct them, and that I can help them move towards that I have something to offer as well. Because we're in relationship. It is a
Right.
collaboration. It's not just me. I agree, Norman. I don't have all the answers.
Right.
More brains in the room are better. And I want those brains that are excited, energized, willing, open to collaborate with me, that I feel that spark.
Well, we got to work on Dracula last fall, and
Right.
it was great as sort of a relay. Elizabeth was out of town, so I sort of did some initial work, and then she came in, and I loved every one of my ideas that I saw come into fruition. I was thrilled about every one of my ideas that either disappeared or morphed to support the play. I was like, oh, I am so glad that this wasn't all about me trying to do this.
Right. And it's hard. It's hard to let go of your babies when you have this thing that you thought you wanted, and then you have to let it go. I mean, I've definitely, I joke about, like, Lear right now. I started with an outdoor large stage abstract production,
Right.
and then managed to switch to something that might have been a Zoom box production, right?
Right.
With the possibility of moving outside if we got through COVID-19.
Right. Right. Oh, yeah, those hopeful
those
days.
months ago we thought those things, right? And
April. It's going to be all done in April.
you're right, we'll be finished by June, right? And then we realized we wouldn't. And then we moved into this other format, which has been really exciting. So I've literally in my head reconfigured the play like 4 or 5 times,
Yeah.
and changed my ideas. So I actually had to grieve this very physical production I was going to do of Lear, because I love physical movement. I love, abstraction. I love putting like gesture and bigness on stage, right? And had this beautiful thing of this cathedral of collapsing trees, and like this whole vision. And I had to grieve that and say, like, that is a production that will get done someday.
Right.
It can't happen right now, and I will let it go. And I had, and then to, like, keep transforming. Oh this, and then we have, George Floyd is murdered, and we have protests in the streets, and I'm feeling angry and grieving and paralyzed to a certain degree because of COVID-19, and not wanting to get sick and be, running the streets, trying to figure out how to access, and that infuses itself into the work. So it's been this ever evolving vision that I had to keep changing, along the way. And it's exciting, it's interesting, it requires flexibility, but it's also, like, it's important to pay attention, right?
Yeah.
And to be able to let go of your babies in order for, like, this other thing that is much stronger to come through.
Yeah, it's interesting what the directors, and I was going to ask you whether you enjoy acting or directing, but directors knowing what your limitations are. You may have one vision, and all of a sudden, usually it's money. It's like, oh, we don't have the money to do that. And it's like, okay, well, I guess I can't do that. I mean, I've been it's funny to me, but we this is when Mike Ward, the late Mike Ward, ran ISIS Arts Collective, and he was doing a series of plays by a series of directors, and the tech had to work with all of the directors. And when we got through during tech, people were yelling at each other. It's like, listen, I want the light to be right there. And, the lighting designer's like, well, no, because we need the light right there because of the other production.
Right.
And no one wanted to work with one another. And there were tears and there was this and there was that, not knowing how to work with the limitations. And you're absolutely right, Elizabeth. I mean, all of a sudden COVID-19 happens and your vision is gone, so you have to let it go. And it takes talent. I mean, I wouldn't know how to do it if I were a director. It's like, okay, I had this vision, now I got to switch and go to another vision. So what you, Norman, you and Elizabeth have to go through as directors, even during Zoom, like, Norman, you had your experience with Maddie May just recently and having to change things. And usually it's with actors. Let's say you have one actor. Go ahead.
If you let limitations limit you, you're making a mistake. If you use limitations as a springboard to what creative thing can I do that tells a story that works to make the production happen. I love being in a space where I'm like, wow, this space is not what I expected. How can I make my show work in this space? Instead of going, oh, how can I make my vision work in this space? I'm not going to fight the space. I want to use the space.
Yeah, limitations are opportunities, right?
Yeah.
Limitations are opportunities. Norman and I have worked on low budgets for, years and years and years and years. And,
we walked by Circle Arts last night. And I was like, that was one of the first production spots for Oakland Public Theater. I was like, back in the day.
Right? And it's like, so those limitations are like, well, what can we do with what we have?
Yeah.
Not what don't I get to do? I mean, yes, of course, there's always things you're like, we've all seen really, really sad productions of things that had huge, huge budgets, right?
Right. Yes.
And then we've seen brilliant things that had no budget, you
Right.
know?
Oh, yeah.
So what are your opportunities? That's what I like to think about.
I'm worried we're running up against the clock.
That's all right. Yep.
Yep. We can go into, I was going to ask you, do you enjoy, no, here's the last question. What do you tell, as a teacher, what do you instruct, what would be one advice that you would give to young actors coming into the theater?
Oh my God. Woo. One.
What's your graduation speech?
God, what is my graduate? You have a gift that nobody else has. No one else can be you. So bring you to the space and then do the work you need to do in the space. But don't be afraid to bring yourself to the table. Because you have uniquely something special that director may need in that moment.
Whether they know it or not.
Whether they know it or not. I think we always think we need to be somebody else in order to get the job or be better or be just really bringing yourself and then doing the work. Those two things are really special, show up ready to collaborate.
Yeah.
Nice.
There you go. And also know your value, as an artist.
Your value, yes.
Yeah.
Don't come in apologizing, but just come in like, I'm here to offer you something. I always tell my students, I said, every audition is a performance, right? It's not an audition. It's a performance. It's an opportunity to share this beautiful thing that you love to do with a group full of people who may or may not have ever seen you before. It's an exercise in performance, not an audition. And if you treat it like an audition, you always feel like you didn't do a good job, or you'll always be worried, or you'll always be thinking about, did I do this? How come I didn't get it? Did I do that? You'll be second guessing yourself. But if you say, I gave everything and I gave a good performance, and if you can walk out of there proud of the work that you did, then that's how you need to feel at the end of an audition.
There you go. Yeah. Right on. Well, thank you so much. That's right. We've hit the 1 hour. We've gone beyond the 1 hour mark.
No, we're way past the hour.
Shout outs, birthdays.
Okay, thankfully, folks, we're not, whatever that season was where people were having a lot of babies, this week didn't get too big. Karen Amano Tompkins, who was one of the co-founders of Thick Description. People don't know Thick Description unless you've been in the Bay Area for a long time, but they were the folks that created the Thick House, which is now called Potrero Stage. and they were very amazing small theater company. So Karen's birthday is today. Chad Jones, who used to cover theater and now has, I think he still keeps, I think he has a theater podcast, but he actually works with a gallery now in, it's on the backside of Potrero. John Wesley Burnett is an actor I know who does a lot of improv. I forget what they're called. The Futurists, I think. Tassi Albastro. When we first started the Yay, I wanted to get Tassi on because he does some amazing stuff. And I've only worked with him. We worked on Buffaloed. He was, I don't remember what his role was officially, but he was this wonderful liaison to community and an amazingly funny talent in and of his own. Don Fricke is my high school theater teacher. And so this is a weird year. Somebody I went to school with took over the department and has run it for all this time, and she has just retired this year. So I just saw a post from her yesterday. As one of her last official acts, she got to give the school secretary an honorary membership in the Thespians. So, but Don Fricke was my teacher, and there's so much that I do that I think about in terms of directing and teaching because of him. Mark Williams is a Bay Area actor. Got to work with when I did Banyan, Jeannie Baroga's Banyan up in the North Bay. Tracy Ward, somebody Elizabeth and I both worked with, amazing Bay Area director. Alan Gavin, who started Brava, which has now become this amazing organization. But Ellen was the one who really got that moving and helped them get the building, was her last official act. Paul Silverman is somebody I think Elizabeth may have introduced me to.
Paul Silverman, we worked at SF Shakes together.
Yeah, Paul Silverman's birthday is this week, and the last one I have is Donna Clark, another high school alum who was, I know from theater way back in the day. Those are mine.
All right, mine is pretty quick. Barbara Michelson Harder. She is the second half of Off-Broadway West, a company that unfortunately folded, but they were very active, especially at the Phoenix Theater, which is owned by Linda Ayers Frederick. And Barbara handled she handled the business part of it, but she's also a great actress in her own right. And
Nice.
his birthday was yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Dale Albright, his birthday was 3 days ago, and he is a part of TBA. I forget what his title is there.
Company and member liaison something. I forget what the actual title is, but he's the community outreach person.
Yeah, for TBA, and also he's a great actor and director.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was on stage with him when we did Skin of Our Teeth, and so his birthday was 3 days ago on July the 29th. And I think Sean Landry, I've talked about her. She and I were on stage. We did the Isis Arts Collective Summer Shorts. That was a protest against George W. Bush. Back in the days when George W. Bush was the worst president,
Right.
Says, hold my drink. Anyway, Sean Landry, she's a wonderful comedian. She's in LA now, and her birthday is August the 3rd. And the last, Jesse Moore, he's a young actor. And he participated in a reading of 4 Men in Paris. He's part of the collaboration to sort of build the play up.
Oh, right. Yes.
Yeah. So his birthday will be August the 4th. And do I have one last person? John Warren. I think you brought John.
It's coming up.
Yeah.
His is coming up. He's a big one.
Yeah, that'll be Saturday. And that is it. There are no shows.
Elizabeth's got some.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I throw a couple in there? I just wanted to throw out to Sophia Martin, who was an actor who used to be in the Bay Area, and she now lives in New York. Who worked together word for word years ago. And Lauren Spencer just had a birthday.
Right, last week. Yeah.
So about 3 days ago. So shout out to Lauren Spencer. And if I may, if it's okay, there are a couple of people who have passed.
Please, yes.
Lisa Lacey, who's a more Sacramento-based actor and educator.
Dynamic African-American woman, advocate.
Beautiful soul, passed away last week. And So just shout out to her family and sending them lots of love. And my uncle passed away on Monday.
Oh,
Was
Wow.
Milton Douglas is my uncle Skeeter, and he was the person who he was cousins with Ruby Dee.
oh,
And
Wow.
he actually lived with Ruby Dee and her family in New York a little bit when he was a kid. And literally was one of the things that stuck in my brain when I was a young person was like, I'm sort of tentatively related to Ruby Dee, even though I'm not really, it's through marriage, so like not really. But in my head, that was all I needed was to say, like, somehow I'm connected to Ruby Dee, and so therefore it is possible.
For
So
young folks who
shout
don't
out to
know,
my Uncle Skeeter.
yeah, young folks who don't know, you research Ruby Dee and
Oh,
I forget her husband. I see
Ozzie Davis.
Ozzy, of course, Ozzy Davis. Yeah, just a wonderful, wonderful theatrical couple who's been around. They're both dead, of course, but they were. I think the last thing I saw them in was the Spike Lee movie Jungle Fever.
Yeah.
But they have
yeah,
a rich history.
And they were both a huge activist. They were
right.
people who behind the scenes they were in the process with Sidney Poitier and his
Raisin in
wife
the Sun.
to getting uh, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X to sit down and talk together.
Wow, wow.
Days before they were on their way to like figuring out the date that they were going to sit and talk together, and then King was shot. So was assassinated. So they were movers and shakers behind the scenes, believing in the movement from the very, very beginning. So they were activists and they were actors. And I just think that is like a beautiful place to kind of be in this world right now.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. One last thing I want to push. Bindlestiff is having a fundraiser. It's called OK Batayo. There's a wonderful, he's a theater person. He's a director, but he's mostly a tech person. He's sort of been in part of the theater, the Bindlestiff community for a while. Ed Mabasa. He was recently hospitalized. His medical supplies dwindled in shelter. He's an individual who's been hit really hard by COVID-19. Not affected, but I mean, as far as job status and rent and all of that sort of stuff, and his medical status. And so Bindlestiff is having a fundraiser today. It'll be at 7 to 9 p.m. PST. We'll have a link. And if you want to donate to Ed, and I know it's part of the Philippine theater community, but really it's a part of Bay Area theater community. I think we're all brothers and sisters, and we're all trying to help each other out. So,
Yeah.
OK Batayo, I'll have the link there. It'll be some skits. The Grady Carnt Gangsters will be there. The Geek Show, QAF, Forbidden Future. They'll have all sorts of little skits and things going on. Bindlestiff has built a wonderful online community. They sponsored my little one-act play, which was the oh shucks, I'm tongue-tied. Tongue-tied. But in any case, I had a one-act play, and they sponsored that, and so I want to thank them for sponsoring me. And so I invite everyone to see OK Batayo. That's today at 7 p.m. PST. That is it, Elizabeth. I hope you had a wonderful time.
I did. Thank you so much for having me. It was like fun to just talk and go all over about lots of different things as well. Theater, but life.
It's been a long time coming.
It has.
I know. We finally got to be on the show, and I wish we had more time. But no, this was wonderful, wonderful.
We can have another visit.
Let me know when. I'm always happy to show up.
Fantastic. All right. Well, folks are watching this already on YouTube. Please click subscribe and like. Or if you don't like, you can put comments on to let us know, how we can improve the show. Many of you are listening to this via your podcast app. If you are an Apple user, you can click on the podcast app to subscribe to the Yay. Or if you're an Android user, you can use the SoundCloud app, or just go on soundcloud.com and you can find us. The Yay was created by theater people for theater people. If you have a show you want to advertise, if you just want to advertise yourself, let us know. Hit us up on Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook. I'm at Reg Space Clay.
And I'm at Hoosier.
Elizabeth, do you have any social media that people can directly connect to you?
I'm at Boo Lizard on Instagram, And that's pretty much all I do because I'm not very good at it.
Boo lizard? Boo lizard?
Blue lizard. Yeah.
BOO, yeah.
Yes.
Boo.
All right. We'll have a link to that.
Yeah.
All righty. Well, everyone have a wonderful weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy, keep your mask on, and as we always say,
We gotta find a better sign off.
and we are out.